Jaylen Brown with the flush. Tatum the drive. Tatum the finish. It is banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with the post-Media Day episode of You Got Boston. Really excited to be here and really excited to have just finished a very long day at the Auerbach Center where we heard from almost all the players. Actually, not almost all the players. We heard from the starters and we heard from a couple of bench players, and I presume we'll hear from the rest of the bench players in the coming days. But yeah, it was great to just get a sense of kind of where people are at. I feel like so much of the summer is speculating or taking one quote that some reporter got for an article and then running with it or working with a facial expression of somebody at the Olympics. So it was great to actually just be able to ask players firsthand exactly what it is that they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and all of that. So my goal for this session is going to be is to answer all your questions, as always. I think there's a lot of podcasts out there. You'll probably be able to watch the interviews, be able to get analysis. So I'm just going to give you guys an opportunity. If you're curious about what happened in Media Day behind the scenes, happy to share as much as possible. I can share some of the questions that I asked, some of the conversations that I had. And I'm super excited. I feel like, this is my first time actually starting the Celtics season from the beginning. Last year I came in midway. So I never actually been to a media day. It was just kind of wild. Like there was so much media there, like finals level media, I would say. And a part of that is also because the rest of the NBA didn't have media today. This was a week before the rest of the league. And we're going to have practice tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. So I'll have updates from all of those days. Saturday, the Celtics are off. And then on Monday, I'm pretty sure they're going to Abu Dhabi. And so for all of next week, it'll be available. We won't have like as much updates as an availability. So this is the big week. This is training camp. We'll hear from people. You can find on CLNS all of the all of the Media Day press conferences. And so if you want to watch for yourself, which I probably would if I wasn't a reporter, I'd be curious to kind of see for myself. You can do that after this as well. And there will be the rest of the interviews and everything in the coming days. So we didn't hear from everybody. So the players that we didn't hear from today, we definitely will hear from in the next few days. And before I start, just plugging, subscribe to You Got Boston if you're watching this on Twitter or on CLNS. I've so appreciated people tuning in the off season. I'm excited for even more people to tune in now that the season have started. And again, as I mentioned, I cover the WNBA and the Celtics. Today, Celtics questions. We'll do a Celtics Media Day analysis. Tomorrow, I'm going to Celtics practice, and then I'm going to Connecticut Sun, the Connecticut Sun home arena, the Mohegan Sun Arena, for the game against the Fever. So tomorrow, I'll do WNBA questions for those of you that are curious on that. So with that, I see that we have some questions lining up. Feel free to just throw them in the chat if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're on Twitter, I won't be able to see them if you comment them, but feel free to go on YouTube and watch this. You can just put in You Got Boston on your YouTube search bar and you'll show up on this video. But yeah, I'll just start. Maybe I'll give my first takeaway first before I go through all the questions. My general impressions from Media Day was that everybody was pretty relaxed. There was a good vibe. There was like, happy to be back, kind of first day of school type of thing. I think Porzingis was the one that said that. But it definitely didn't feel like, oh, we won the championship, we're all laid back, we're enjoying ourselves and like relaxing and any of that. Like we are months removed from that feeling. We are now at a point where everybody's like super fired up and ready to go. And I thought that everybody had their own unique approach to today. I would say Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum had very different energies today. I'm seeing here somebody said it felt like the Jays were pissed off. I thought Tatum seemed pissed off, and he seemed really motivated by the Olympic thing. And he said, I'm not going to give anybody credit for motivating me. So I'm not going to give like Steve Kerr credit for benching me, essentially, although he didn't use his name or anything. But Jaylen, I thought, was loose. He made some jokes. He was happy. He was like, honestly, a version of him that I've seen a handful of times, very rarely. He talked about how great a summer was, that the championship was a blessing, that he dove into the shoe market and learned about the shoe industry. And I think tonight he's making an announcement about his new shoe because he hinted at that earlier today. And then obviously he talked a little bit about some other things too, about, he mentioned the snub, but he didn't get into it. I think like that's in the past. We spoke to him at Summer League. I feel like that was more the opportunity where he actually kind of reflected and was more willing to talk about all that. But Tatum said, like a reporter asked him, I actually don't know who the reporter was. It wasn't one of the usual Celtics beat reporters, but the reporter started off by asking Tatum, like, what did you learn in the Olympics? And Tatum was like, what do you want to ask me? Like, what's the question here? Do you want to ask why I didn't play 2 games? Like, is that the question? And the reporter was kind of like, yeah. So Tatum basically said, I still don't know why I didn't play, but I know everything happens for a reason. And also, he said the quote of the day, in my opinion, and that was that Joe Mazzulla was asking him, he was talking to Joe Mazzulla a lot during that period of time, and that Joe was very happy, not only that Tatum was not the finals MVP, but also that now he was getting kind of extra motivation from the fact that he was benched. And so, yeah, that was interesting. That was kind of the quote of the day. I thought that Mazzulla is like celebrating Tatum going through this like national crisis of this benching that was heard around the world. But outside of that, yeah, I thought that, he talked about how happy he is to be back, all that. Brad spoke, Mazzulla spoke. I'm happy to kind of go into any particular press conferences if people have questions. I won't just ramble on for too long because we'll start doing these questions. So starting off, question here from Pete. Good evening. Didn't KP seem quite healthy? So for those of you that are just tuning in, Porzingis spoke today. I was honestly a little surprised that he did because he is injured and he doesn't necessarily like have to be available. I think if he's injured, but it kind of reminded me during the finals when he was dealing with that calf injury and everybody was kind of wondering, is he going to be back for the finals or not? And we were all sitting there in the Auerbach Center. And the way that it works is like we're all sitting in rows, like in a little assembly, and there's like a stage and the players file in one after the other. And all of a sudden Porzingis turns the corner. And he is happy. He's waving to everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. He's very jovial with the media. And right away he says that he's doing really well, that he's doing a lot better than I think he even expected, and that things are moving quickly. He said it's a very rare injury. We're going to be slow. And he also said, the medical staff and everybody, they are telling me to be slow, to be careful. I would go a little bit faster if I could. And it's kind of exactly what his energy was with the calf injury. After the conference finals, between the conference finals and the finals last season, there was like a week and a half break, because they got, they swept them. And so there was so much time in between. And when we spoke to Porzingis, he just wanted to be back. And it was clear like he was a little impatient, but that he was also recognizing how he was going to defer, obviously, to his, to the medical staff and everything. But yeah, he said he's doing well. I think Brad said that he's even been surprisingly well how fast he's been recovering. I think the general timeline that he reported to Ramona Shelburne of ESPN is December at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if it spilled into January if he's just really taking his time. But in either case, like it's very clear that there has been no setbacks. He was walking. He actually said the thing that I found really fascinating was that he played with light contact over the weekend and he's been running. So I don't know. I mean, again, this is a weird injury, but to me, it's like if you're running and this contact and it's September, like he'll probably be good to go maybe sooner than we even expect. The question is whether, him being good to go translates into him actually playing. There might be a little bit of a delay there. And I guess I should mention also that the other piece of information that I had, and that's that there was 2 surgeries that we did not know about. One was Luke Kornet had a wrist surgery. I remember Luke Kornet like banged his wrist in the Eastern Conference Finals, and like I never thought about it again. I feel like a bad reporter. I didn't, it never really came up. He obviously didn't play in the finals, and now I'm starting to think like I wonder if there was that was part of the reason why Tillman kind of jumped him in the rotation in the finals. We always kind of discussed it as a matchup thing, but then he had off-season wrist surgery like pretty much right away after the season ended. And then Tillman had a knee scope in July. And so they're both kind of recovering and I think will be good to go for their respective procedures. And Brad revealed the Tillman one. I thought it was kind of funny, or the Kornet one. He said, as you guys know, and I was like, I don't think any of us knew that Luke Kornet had wrist surgery. But I say all that to say that I think Luke Kornet and Xavier Tillman might have like some limitations to them early on. And I feel like just yesterday we were talking about this and someone asked me, is Mimi, between Mimi, Xavier, and Luke, like who is the person who you're the most think is, going to have a big role in the rotation? And I actually think I said Mimi just because I think he has the highest ceiling. He doesn't have like injury concerns that I knew of. And now that's only more firm knowing that they both had procedures in the offseason. And so I think Nimi's going to come in and have a big role. I know that we have some, fans from Portugal that are probably going to be very excited about that. And so, yeah, we'll probably see an increased load because, Al Horford spoke today. I think Al's feeling great, but he's ramping up. He mentioned he's not considering retirement or, he feels good. It's not on his radar right now. So kind of like just stop asking him about it. But I think between those two offseason surgeries, Nimi is the one that stood out to me as like he might be taking on a bigger role than maybe we thought. So yeah, that was something that that kind of stood out to me there. Just going to run down the list here. So feel free to put your questions in the chat box and I'll be kind of looking through these and pinning the ones that I'm answering. And again, I'm going to be doing these like all week because this is training camp week and I'm actually around the team and have a lot to say as of today. So feel free to throw in questions. And also I got a couple people that DM'd me like, can you ask Luke if he wants to be a comedian after his career ends? And I was like, that's actually a pretty good question. He was being absolutely hilarious today, but those DMs came after the press conferences. So if you have anything you want asked of the bench players, like I'm happy to see if I can squeeze it in tomorrow when we have our pressers, provided that it's like a question that makes sense for me to ask, obviously. Okay, so question here from Tom. Who was your favorite interview today? I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown. I think that Jaylen had a very relaxed, happy energy about him. And it's always just nice to see people happy, right? I think that's human nature. But I also think that there was something distinct about kind of the way that he carried himself where it didn't feel like, oh, okay, Jaylen Brown is satisfied. He won finals MVP. He won the championship. Maybe he's going to take things for granted and come out a little bit slow. It was actually quite the opposite. I felt like Jaylen's energy was like, I'm in the best shape of my life. I've been working really hard. He made note of that even though he's been traveling around the world, he's found a way to stay really engaged in the gym and everything. And so he, to me, strikes the perfect balance of like somebody who is in a really great mood and was light and happy and clearly like still kind of have the championship glow. But it didn't seem like, okay, he's a candidate for the championship hangover. It seems like he's really been prioritizing staying in the gym, staying in shape, getting better. But it was funny. He joked around. I think I mentioned this earlier, but like the first question was about staying off the Olympic team. And Jaylen was like, wow, damn, like first question, like you're not even going to warm up here with me. And so I thought that was funny because, he could have taken him out the wrong way and been like, really? Like I just won the championship and you're going to ask me for the Olympic thing right away. But he took everything in stride and made some jokes about being old. He was asked about, I think John Corrales asked him about being the longest tenured player on the team, or maybe it was another reporter, but he was like, it's another way of calling me old. So he was joking around. It was not, it's not always the Jaylen Brown that you get. Certainly a lot of press conferences that we had with him last year, it was not his energy, even after good games, even after wins. He's a serious guy, and he made clear that he was going to be kind of all business regardless of what happens. And it seems like he let his guard down a little bit. So that was cool. That was probably my favorite press conference. I got to give a shout out to Luke Kornet. Seriously, like I don't want to be biased here, but if you have 10 minutes, search the Luke Kornet press conference, watch it on YouTube. CLNS has it. It was so funny. He started talking about why he still didn't pay off his mortgage and giving economic advice. And then also he was talking about like Woj and how he didn't mean to be the first Woj bomb, but shout out to Woj. He had a great career, even though he's still alive. Like, it doesn't sound funny when I say it, but I swear to God, like I was literally wheezing and I was like, okay, I can't be acting like this, like in the press conference room. But Luke Kornet is hilarious. He was really entertaining today. He doesn't do media a lot. So when he does do media, I feel like he really capitalizes on the fact that he's at the podium and has the opportunity to do it. Like he really, yeah, he I don't know that this bit can go on like doing like all this clown stuff and being really funny at the podium if he was like a Jayson Tatum, like he's always talking to the media. I think he speaks so infrequently that he can kind of do a whole performance when he's up there, honestly, in a sense. Callum here asks, any idea what the shot mechanic issue that Tatum is trying to fix is? I don't want to misquote him. He spoke about it today. I can share the link, exactly the tweet of what he exactly described. But he mentioned it was a couple different things, and he mentioned that it was part of it was his release point. Like I think he was actually lowering his shot a little bit too much. But I got to find the exact thing. But the thing that stood out to me from what he said today about his shot mechanic issue is that I think he recognized in the playoffs when he was struggling that his shot was not where it needed to be. Obviously, we all saw that. He was shooting 28% from three, and then obviously struggled even more in the Olympics. But that he actually made the decision to not go try to tweak his shot in the middle of the playoffs because of the fact that he had to prioritize rest, but that he was otherwise playing well and contributing and the team was winning. So he didn't want to all of a sudden go and do a whole thing where he is revamping a shot and getting in all these extra hours at the gym and everything. So I say all that to say, I think we sometimes talk about, is this mental or is this mechanical? I think he recognized that it was mechanical relatively early on too, but also didn't want to do too much. And so now, since he's gotten back from a lot of his travels and he has been all over the place, he has made it a point to get in the gym. He's been in the gym with Jrue Holiday, his skills coach, fixing a couple mechanical things. And I would imagine that it works. I don't know. I think some shooters don't really go through that, but he has a little bit of an unorthodox shot. So, and he's not a pure shooter. I'm sure Sam Hauser's not going in as frequently and revamping a shot, but it is ultimately something that makes sense. Okay. Question about, did you get the impression that KP might come back earlier? I got the impression that KP will be available to come back earlier. I genuinely do think that he will be good to go. I don't think that they'll play him earlier. That's the kind of distinction there. And so I think that they're going to prioritize above everything else his health. And honestly, he's kind of an injury risk, even if he's not dealing with anything. Every game that he plays is a little bit of a risk. I hate to put it like that, but I think the fact that he is going to be ready to go doesn't mean that they'll actually play him. And I think when he does get played, they'll probably ease into him and play more limited minutes, the back-to-backs. We're going to see they're going to continue to manage this guy, not just with this particular injury. I think in general, they're going to have an approach to him that's maybe not what he wants necessarily. Okay. Oh, this is cool. Watching this from Latvia. What are the prices for OK seats in Boston? First of all, very cool to see fans from all over the world tuning in. It's actually, I'm going to use this as a moment to discuss a different topic, and that's just the fact that there were multiple players that brought championships to countries that had never seen an NBA player win a championship before. It's something that Al Horford spoke about. Al Horford was in the Dominican Republic with Joe Mazzulla, with Tony Dobbins. He said that as soon as he asked Joe was all in. They brought the trophy to the Dominican Republic, and that the country really celebrated him. And I thought a nice little nugget that we learned today was that Al saw Manu Ginobili do the same. When he first brought the Larry O'Brien trophy to Argentina, I think it gave him this inspiration of okay, I want to do this one day. And he told his wife, one day I'm going to win the championship, but I'm going to bring the Larry O'Brien trophy to my home country. And so he was able to do that this summer. Nemish Keita, who didn't speak with us yet today, I think we'll speak with him later in the week, but he did do the NBC Boston panel. He talked about kind of the love that he's received in Portugal. So I say all that just to say that Al and that these other players really were embraced by their home countries. I'm sure Porzingis was as well. We didn't speak to him about that particular topic yet. But anyways, to answer your question, what are prices for OK seats in Boston? Generally speaking, I think $150 a ticket, $100, sometimes a little bit less than that to get in. It's balcony seats, but honestly, I think balcony seats are totally fine. I've sat in balcony seats many times in my life before I covered the team, and I always felt once you're in the Garden, it doesn't really matter where you're sitting. Opening night, I've been monitoring those prices, and those are about $450 tickets. So those are a little bit more expensive. And actually, I'm going to use that as my cue to talk a little about game time. I love going to events right now. It's football season. I love going to football games, concerts, really any events. Living in Boston, you can just put in any event into the Game Time app, and you can get the best prices guaranteed. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So all you have to do is figure out what it is you want to attend. For example, I'm looking right now to get tickets for my family for opening night for the Celtics. So I can search that game in, browse through the seats on Game Time Picks. I can already see there's lots of great deals. There are super deals, different tiers of deals. And basically, as I'm looking, I'm able to actually see what the actual perspective of the court is from that particular seats. I have to make sure I don't want to get them seats that are in the balcony that are too far away. I can see what the court view is going to look like from those seats. So that way I'm able to choose without just looking at a seat number, which maybe doesn't mean anything to me. I'm able to see right away that this is a seat that I want to buy for my family members for opening night, so that they can see the ring ceremony and the banner raising and all that fun stuff. So Game Time Picks makes curation much easier. It makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. It's all in pricing, so you can use this feature to see the total upfront price. So there's no fees at the checkout. So the price that it says is the price that it is. You get the panoramic view. You get a lowest price guarantee for Game Time. So if you find a lower price elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And there's Game Time ticket coverage. So your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. And I really do use Game Time for all of my purchases. So I'm currently monitoring. I haven't bought the tickets yet, but my dad and my brother, it's their birthday gift to go to opening night. So we will see. When I feel like the time is right, I'm pulling the plug on that one. Okay, continuing to look through questions here. Is that Latvian in the chat? Is that what I'm seeing? Pretty cool if so. Did you get a sense of what the older players thought of the new guys like Baylor or Watson? There was one question that spoke to that. And honestly, today it was like there were so many reporters and so many players and so much to discuss that like we're going to have all week things to discuss with everybody. The only question that spoke to it was Sam Hauser. I think Bobby Manning might have asked him. But he mentioned Baylor, and he said Baylor is not just a good shooter. He's just like has a really good feel for the game. He's a good all-around player, and he's going to have a good NBA career. I think people are going to compare the two guys, Baylor Shireman and Sam Hauser, just because of the fact that they're both shooters. They're both like white guys. Like inevitably that's going to come up as like a parallel point. I think Drew Peterson kind of gets lumped into that category as well. But the reality is that I actually think Sam Hauser and Baylor Shireman are very different players. And the more you guys watch Baylor play, and I was at Summer League, so I watched him a lot there, the more I kind of solidified that viewpoint of like him being not really a Sam-like player. Like he's more of a passer, he's more of kind of an all-around guy, and he's also not as good of a shooter. And again, this is something that I've talked about a lot in my time covering the Celtics, but like it's one thing to be a shooter. It's another thing to be a Sam Hauser shooter. Like Sam Hauser is not like a dime a dozen. Like that is really unusual to have that level of accuracy. And I always point to the fact that he has never shot below 40% from the field as like a stat to really kind of recap like how good of a shooter he has been. And so Baylor Shireman is not going to get there, but not there right now. He might get there. But Sam was really impressed by him. That was the only thing that we heard. We didn't hear from Baylor or Anton today. I believe they spoke on the Embassy Boston podium. I haven't gotten a chance to watch all of those interviews yet, but you can find those as well. I asked a couple questions. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, Julius, but thank you. I asked Derek White about the Olympics and kind of what an incredible experience that was for him, and how he was just kind of sitting at home and all of a sudden got the call. I also talked to Jaylen Brown about. I asked him what the highlight of his summer was. He mentioned really was the philanthropic works, launching Boston Exchange and Oakland Exchange, these two kind of tandem foundations that are going to be investing in underrepresented communities and creators and entrepreneurs. And the fun fact there is that Jaylen Brown is working on the Oakland one with Jason Kidd. You may remember him as the coach of the Dallas Mavericks. So funny little overlap there. But yeah, I talked to Al about the Dominican Republic. I actually liked Porzingis. I asked Porzingis about the fact that he has been obviously it's frustrating to rehab, but how much does it help to know that like he was able to contribute to the Celtics in game 1 of the finals, game 2 before he went down? Like, is that motivating him? Is that image of like the championship stuff getting back on the court easier? And he actually took my question a different way that I meant it, but what he said was, it's very obvious that we are that the Celtics and that as he's kind of going back to his return, that he knows he can get back to contribute to the team. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there, but he knows that like because he has been there, like he's not feeling like, oh, am I going to get back there or not? Like he already knows. He's been down this road before. He's dealt with so many different kinds of injuries. This is not new. This is nothing new for him. This is not anything unprecedented. And that stood out to me because I was thinking, like, knock on wood, but like if Jayson Tatum had a major injury like that, he hasn't had to deal with something like that in his career. So I'm sure mentally you start to wonder, like, am I going to be the same player? Am I not? Kristaps Porzingis doesn't have to worry about that because he's literally dealt with everything that you can think of, and he's always come back okay. So I think mentally he's really strong, and he spoke to that, and I was glad that I asked him that question, even though it wasn't actually the exact thing that I was looking for, but it went in another direction that was really helpful. Question here: do you think that Pritchard will play a bigger role this season / more minutes? I think so. I think that early on we're going to see more rest days and more, more guys just sitting out different games, playing more limited minutes. I think guys like Jrue Holiday and Derek White, who are healthy and relatively young, are going to all of a sudden play more because are going to get rest days because they're going to, they played through the finals, they played in the Olympics. Like, I think all of that is going to come into effect. And so then you might see Peyton Pritchard play a bigger role. But I think Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, like, these are guys that know that ultimately they're going to play the same role that they've been used to playing. Like, I asked Sam Hauser today, like, what's an individual skills thing that you want to get better at? And he said, I'm not going to all of a sudden start doing like ISOs on people, but I might all of a sudden like have a pump fake that I add, or a drive by, even in a late shot clock situation, I might like drive to the basket. So I think Pritchard you're not going to come and see like, oh, new year, new Pritchard, but I think he's going to refine the things that he's been working on and might get some increased minutes because of the fact that guys are going to get some inevitable rest days, I think. Question here: have I met Jackie McMullen? I have not in person, not anything like substantial, but she comes up so often. I feel like people bring her up to me just because there haven't been like that many female sports reporters, so I've gotten like a lot of inquiries about that, but I hope to get to know her more as I continue to do this. Pete asked, what was my favorite question from another CLNS reporter? Jack asked a bunch of questions. I like Jack's theme today. Jack asked like questions about just in general, like how different things feel this season from last season. And he got varying answers to that. And I think he may have already published, or if not, he's working on a story for Hardwood Houdini about that. Because to me, this is my first media day. So I watched the other one from home. I was already at Celtics blog, but I wasn't covering everything in person the way that I am now. And so this is my first time like experiencing it in person. But I think for a lot of reporters, it was like, people were like, wow, vibes were so much better this time than last year. And I think last year there was a big story of Jrue Holiday and that trade, and obviously losing Rob Williams at the buzz there. And so there was a lot going on last year media day. But I like that Jack was kind of consistently asking seemingly everybody that question around kind of last year to this year and how different they feel. And honestly, a very common response was like, not that different, actually. So that was interesting. Question here: will I be at practice tomorrow? Yes, I will be at practice for the rest of the week. So tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, and balancing Celtics with WNBA coverage. So right after this, I'm going to the WNBA stuff and everything. So I'll be in practice. I'll be posting tweets, clips. I have some articles in the works. I'm doing a big story on Jaylen Brown for tomorrow morning for SBNation.com. So check that out. But yeah, follow along. I'll be continuing to post things all year. And as I mentioned before, I'm also planning on traveling quite a bit too. So yeah, excited for that. And I appreciate everybody that tunes into this stuff. This is so fun. Yeah. Will Al be starting until Kristaps Porzingis returns? I think so. That would be my understanding. I mean, there was no discussion of the starting lineup. I feel like there was always like a lot of clarity around like if Porzingis is out, or really if any of the 5 starters were out last season, Al always filled that role. And so I've kind of come to assume that, but I don't want to report that because it wasn't asked today anything about the starting lineup. I will say I wouldn't be surprised if there are some rest days where all of a sudden you see Luke, Nimi, Tillman enter the starting lineup, or even a smaller lineup. Also a possibility, right? So we'll see. But one thing that I mentioned, that I wanted to mention, I think Lonnie Walker, when he spoke with NBC Boston today, I tweeted out a couple of the clips, but he made very clear, like, he does not have a guaranteed spot on this team. He's on an Exhibit 10. I think we have all been really excited and talking a lot about Lonnie Walker, but we're not sure if that's, if he's going to pan out with his team. And I think the uncertainty in the front court is part of the reason why that they might want to keep that roster spot open, especially now that I know that 2 of the players had off-season surgeries that I did not know about. And so I assume that Al will be starting, but also nothing is necessarily confirmed. And that's a good segue to my next question. Were there any thoughts from Brad or Joe on Lonnie Walker IV? So both of them mentioned him, I believe. Brad spoke about one thing that stood out, and I tweeted this out, was Brad mentioned the fact that he has a good relationship with Derek White, and that he's also worked out with Jrue Holiday quite a bit in the offseason. They've heard good things about him, that obviously he can score, but nothing substantial on Lonnie Walker. I wasn't able to glean any insight around whether he is likely to make the team. Obviously, if he doesn't make the team, he'll probably go to Maine, but he can't be a two-way. So once he goes to Maine, it's like a lot of different teams might want to snatch him up or not. I don't know. But I have not gotten the chance to talk with him or any of the other Exhibit 10s. I am talking to one of his former college teammates tomorrow. I'm working on a feature on Lonnie Walker. So trying to kind of put the pieces together. I'm so curious and so fascinated by like what really happened here with Lonnie Walker, like why he did not get picked up, why he didn't get signed by anybody, what the situation is with Exhibit 10. When he was getting interviewed today by the NBC Sports Boston crew, a couple times they asked him about like how he's going to fit with the team, Mark D'Amico, Caleb Burton, Eddie House. And he was always like, made sure to add, I'm on an Exhibit 10. So I don't know, I'm just grinding. Like I'm working twice a day, all day. He hasn't really explored the city. He's really been focused on being in the gym, pounding the rock, he said. And so I think that he wanted to kind of remind them and everybody else that we're not sure. We're really not sure like what the situation is going to be. And obviously he's very hopeful, but that he has a long way to go between an Exhibit 10. There's multiple Exhibit 10 guys, right? I think we're all talking about Lonnie Walker, but none of those guys have any pathway forward guaranteed right now. I will say somebody like DJ Stewart was an Exhibit 10 guy last year. He was a standout with the Maine Celtics. And then DJ Stewart had a great summer league, awesome summer league, was a standout and signed a 2-way with the Chicago Bulls. So sometimes it's like, the expression delayed, not denied. Like this is kind of a good use of that. Some of these guys might not get the opportunity this year, but they're staying in the mix. They're staying in being in the right places, talking to the right people, and they just might get there. And so, but I imagine that we'll hear from some of the Exhibit 10 guys this week. And I'm also hoping to speak to Lonnie Walker, requested an interview. So fingers crossed. We'll see if I can get that. And a quick message from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks, your picks are still alive. So right now, if you're watching games, if you're watching basketball, different sports, the injury insurance thing, that can be a lot of fun. That has already benefited me in the past as well. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Awesome. So I'm going to run through the rest of these questions here. Question about the clean-shaven Jaylen Brown. I have to admit, I was talking about this with other guys, other reporters, and I didn't notice that he shaved. Like, I actually didn't notice it. He just looked happy to me. Maybe he just looks happier without a beard. But there wasn't like, he walked onto the podium, like I didn't process it at all. And then everybody else was talking about it, like how different he looked. And I was like, that's wild. Cause I feel like I've seen Jaylen Brown a million times on TV in person. I'm surprised I didn't notice, but, yeah. Question here, will the Celtics, I wonder if the Celtics will do an all-woman broadcast again. Really enjoyed DiJonai on the call that one game. Yeah, that was awesome. I purposefully watched that game from home, and I got to watch DiJonai and Abby and the rest of the crew, and it was great. And yeah, I imagine that they'll do it again. I haven't heard anything about it, but I will just plug DiJonai Carrington is also a WNBA player. Connecticut's on star, I might add, and she'll be playing tomorrow and I'll have all the coverage on that for SB Nation. She's an all-defense candidate, a most improved player candidate. Really a fun player to watch. I am not supposed to pick favorites, but she is one of my favorite WNBA players to watch. So feel free to plug into that. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry about the mic. Feel free always to tell me if you guys can't hear me well. I get a little distracted sometimes with keeping the mic close. Tom, this is a great point. So Tom here writes, I wonder if Derek White is excited to play with Lonnie Walker again. Spurs fans always like the White-Walker backcourt. I should have asked him about that. I asked him about the Olympics, but that would have been a good question. So hopefully we get to hear from Derek again this week, because I am curious on his perspective and if he might be able to offer some more insight on kind of like what is going on with Lonnie Walker and what the situation is. But yeah, I mean, it's something that Brad spoke to right away. He said like that they have that relationship. I think that they spoke right away. Someone here asks, why wasn't Peyton there? Peyton just wasn't one of the players that spoke with the full media conglomerate today. Jaden Springer didn't either. Xavier Tillman didn't. The two-ways didn't. The rookies didn't. The Exhibit 10s didn't. So we got a lot more to go. I thought like all 14 guys were going to speak, all 17 guys potentially. So it was certainly a little bit less than what I expected. But Peyton Pritchard did speak with the NBC Sports Boston crew. So if you want to see that full interview, it was like 10 minutes long, you can see that. I also will plug, last week I had my dad on and Dana Altman, Peyton Pritchard's college coach, and we talked a little bit about Peyton Pritchard's journey to the NBA. So if you are looking for some Pritchard content, check that out if you haven't already. And I'm going to take a last question here where the CLNS crew gifted Tatum threes. Could be in the works. Haven't received anything yet, but we'll certainly post and let you guys know if I do. But yeah, they look pretty cool. I got the email today about kind of the different designs and everything. So I posted it on Twitter. I'm not like a huge shoe person. I have the Sabrina Ionescu's for basketball shoes. They're really comfortable. Although I do sprain my ankle a lot, but I don't think it's her fault. But yeah, I think that the new designs look really cool, the colorways, and I think Jaylen Brown, like if possible, he's already announced any minute now. I think he might announce something. He alluded to it a couple of times today. In any case, that's all the questions for today. I want to just add how grateful I am for all of you for tuning in all off season and how excited I am to be doing this again for a second season and to be able to cover basketball full time. I'm doing this in the WNBA with SB Nation. Please subscribe to You Got Boston, to CLNS. I'll have more coverage tomorrow. I'll probably go live again tomorrow from the Mohegan Sun Arena. I'll talk a little bit about Celtics practice and then also preview some Connecticut Sun, Indiana Fever things as well. But yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Really appreciate it. Sorry if my mic was too far for too much of this. And we'll be back very soon. And I also know in a couple of hours, the Garden Report crew is going to do their media day take. So tune into that if you want more Celtics content from CLNS. Have a great rest of your night, everybody. Thanks so much, and we will see you again soon.